Hi, my name's Andrea Thorson. I'm a Dean of Instruction here at Bakersfield College.
And hi, I'm Matt Andrasian Jones, and I'm a faculty in the Academic Technology Department. Andrea and I are here today to talk to you about an accessibility review that was conducted by an outside consultant hired by the district named Geyer Dietrich. So as we talk about our findings, there's a couple of other things we'd like to talk to you about too.
One of those things is the definition of terms. So a lot of people get accessibility and accommodation mixed up, or they think that they're the same thing. And they're actually not. They're two very different items. So one is more proactive and one is more reactive. When you think about accommodation, you want to think about being reactive. That might be something you do for one individual person, whereas accessibility is something you do to make sure all information is accessible to all individuals at all times.
So an example of an accommodation would be if a student comes to you with an accommodations request where you grant them an extra 30 minutes on a quiz, for example. Meanwhile, accessibility could have to do with the same quiz, but it's about how you've set up the quiz, making sure that all your students have equal access to what you're quizzing them about.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that Matt and I want to make sure we express today, in case you weren't aware, there's this district-wide accessibility task force. And it was created, I think about a year and a half ago, at least, and by John Means. And he's going to talk about that a little bit, like what led up to that. But one of the things that Matt and I want to impress upon you is that there seems to be sometimes a disconnect between feeling like accessibility and accommodation are necessary and or beneficial versus something we just have to do. We are bound by law to make sure that we're doing these things. But one thing that we hope that you take away from our presentation today isn't just that you have to do something because of legal ramifications or otherwise, but rather because you want to. I want you to know that it matters. What you do for accommodations and accessibility makes a difference in the lives of our students. And it doesn't just benefit people with disabilities, it benefits everyone. If you ever question that, please just come talk to me. As a person who has a sometimes visible disability and often invisible disabilities, I can tell you that firsthand, accessibility matters. And it makes a difference in the world of a student in terms of feeling like you belong, getting rid of the imposter syndrome, and getting rid of the feeling that you have to be treated special and different. To be able to access information equally is such a relief for our students. So that's one thing that Matt and I hope you walk away from today is not just the things that we did well and the things we have to work on and the things we have to do because of this outcome of this study, but rather a change in your heart because you know it's the right thing to do for our BC family.
In addition to those things that Drea mentioned, another thing that we hope you walk away from is some future actions you can take, things that you will be able to participate with or engage with on campus, virtually, in order to be more accessible in your classrooms. In my role at Bakersfield College, I work with a lot of faculty, teaching how to use various elements of technology or even how to improve pedagogy in their classroom. So one thing that I get to see is a vast amount of different areas where we could be more accessible campus-wide. So we want to make sure that you know what you need to do in order to be more accessible as well.
We want to leave you with a quote that leads us into this next section. Accessibility benefits everybody, not just the disabled. Create an inclusive world. The problem is we don't talk about accessibility as a solution. Instead, it's ironically seen as a barrier or an extra cost.
So the next part of the presentation, Dre is actually going to walk you through some of the strengths that our outside consultant found that are happening with regard to accessibility across the district. Then you'll have a little bit of time with Vice Chancellor John Means, and then you'll get to see me again as I explain some of the general issues that the report found. And at the very end, Dre and I will come back together to talk to you about what we recommend have happen.
In the report, we were all praised for some very specific things. I want to highlight those for you today. And of course, this report was done district-based, so it takes into consideration all the colleges and the district. While I'm talking about that, I want to, in the background, show you slides that are specific to BC because I really want to highlight and applaud the people and the work that has been done on accessibility so far. to say a thank you to those individuals, but also just so that everyone's aware in terms of what have we been doing. Now, some of these things we've done for a really long time, and some we've only done recently. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can kind of see some of the things that have been going on at Bakersfield College specifically. This is not exhaustive, while I'm talking about the four major areas that we were praised for in the report. So one of the first areas we were praised for in the report was regarding champions. So what she calls champions are these individuals at each institution and the district that are excited, that are passionate, that care, that recognize that accessibility is a problem, and they actually go out and actively try to do something about it. The second piece was our district-wide accessibility task force. She was really impressed, number one, that we had one and that we had participation. But secondly, we owned it when we didn't know something, and we sought out and sought information, and we want to fix it. So she was impressed that we had it. She was really doubly impressed that it wasn't just a meeting where people talked, but people actually got things done. You can see on this slide of BC in the background where we've been embedding things regarding accessibility. And I'll go to the next slide so you can see a little bit more about what we've been doing. The third area that we were praised for in the report had to do with our web team's care and their awareness. So the fact that they understand that there's a need and they care about it. The fourth area was overall awareness at the institutions as a whole. So the district and all three colleges, she said, it seems like people are generally aware that accessibility is an issue and we need to fix it. The problem, she said, is that that awareness isn't correlating into institutional change and compliance. And it's not having an impact on people's sense of personal responsibility. And that's something we need to change. So that is a good segue into what Matt's going to talk about when he talks about the things we need to work on and what we need to do about those individual things. But before we go there, I would like to hand this off to John Means, Vice Chancellor John Means. He is so important and critical to the work we've been doing on this disability task force. He actually created it. So I'll let him explain a little bit more. And once he's done, we'll get back at it with Matt in terms of what we needed to work on in the report.
I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the beginning of the decision for the district to start an accessibility task force. About 4 years ago, there was an audit by the state auditor's office about colleges and how well we're doing on providing compliance to all the accessibility guidelines. And they chose the three community colleges that were thought to be some of the leaders in compliance to the accessibility guidelines, laws, and guidance. And what they found was those colleges were not doing a very good job and were out of compliance in a number of areas. And they wrote the report, submitted it. It was just about 4 years ago. And all the colleges across the state went, wow, if those colleges are in need of doing a better job, we need to look at it again ourselves and how we're doing. And the chancellor and I talked about it, and the chancellor said, John, I want you to start a task force and look at how we're doing and come back with some recommendations. So the task force, was created about 23, 24 people from across the district, 3 colleges in the district office. And we ended up hiring a consultant who met with a number of people at all 3 colleges in the district office based on a framework and analysis of how we're doing in a number of different key areas. Also, shortly after that audit was completed, there were a couple of significant lawsuits for community colleges that were settled in California that were pretty heavily geared towards these community colleges being out of compliance, and had to force them to pretty quickly come up to speed and make some changes in order to be compliant. So we created the task force. We met, we had the consultant did her review and discussions and interviews with the colleges in the district office, came back with the recommendations and findings. And for me, what that means is, one, we needed to be in compliant with Section 508 and Americans with Disability Act that says we provide the same equal access to everybody no matter what, if they have various disabilities, we have to remove barriers that get in their way. And all of us are familiar with the last 10, 15 years, a real emphasis on access and particularly success and equity. And success and equity means that we're not just having the students in our programs, but we want them to be successful. So to me, that made an awful lot of sense, because I think we've made an awful lot of progress on success and equity. We still have a long ways to go, but particularly with people with disabilities, I think it's an overlooked group of people who we need to rethink and open our minds to how can we do a better job of serving people with disabilities. And yes, we have the DSPS departments on our colleges, but it's really a job for all of us. Number one, with faculty. Number two, with staff that support everything that we do with our students. And number three, administration. And for me, it's been eye-opening in looking at the recommendations and beginning to review how we can make suggestions for improvement. And I would say, out of my experience, the number one guide that we can follow that's going to make the biggest difference is training of everybody, and particularly faculty. It needs to be faculty driven. And so far, the faculty at all three of our colleges have done just a wonderful job of buying in. Now we need to sink our teeth into, okay, what kind of training do we need? And we need to look at our software, our services to student, the curriculum material, the books, any coursework, handouts have to be able to be translated into somebody that has a sight disability, hearing disability. Most people are like me, where we thought about it and we've taken some initial steps, but we have to go much further. So I think the training, in some cases, mandatory training need to be implemented across our district so that we can understand how we can do a better job. What are some of the examples of how we're not in compliance? What are some of the examples of best practices? And again, our colleges have already started that and done a great job of beginning that process. Another is, I think we need somebody on campus and at the district office that's tasked with the responsibility of overseeing 508 compliance, and how are we doing, and kind of giving us a push to make sure that we continue to make progress. I also see the task force as doing that. We've of the 7 areas of recommendations and findings and next steps provided by the consultant, we've begun that process, but we need the task force and others to say, okay, we've taken the first couple of steps. Now, what are the following steps that we need to take if we're going to make real progress and make a difference for people with disabilities? The last I'd say is, how do we do a better job of communicating among ourselves, among the colleges, about best practices, faculty to faculty, staff to staff, and administrators across all 3 areas? How can we do a better job of communicating best practices, what still needs to be done, timeline, et cetera? And I think we're well on our way. We all just need to commit that we're going to do what we can and participate with an open mind as another piece of equity for those people with disabilities, so we can make sure that they have the same access to success in our colleges that everybody else does. So thank you, everybody, for your participation, and thank you for your help.
And for all that great information. The next thing that I'd like to cover with you are some of the general issues Geyer Dietrich found in her accessibility review of our district. And they fall into these categories. Now, I'm not going to cover each and everything, but I'm going to give you some highlights, such as, yes, our district has faced complaints from students. Other districts face this as well, but we need to correct this. We need to make sure that this isn't happening. Because if a lawsuit is filed, it's not just against the institution. The lawsuit can impact the individual faculty, the department chair, the dean, and so on through every level of our organization. The findings also reported the need for a district office level 508 ADA position. Now, this is a quote directly from Geyer Dietrich, which reads, "This is a broader issue than just students. We have staff, faculty, and admin and classified that the funding is not allowed to be used for." So the ADA 508 compliance position would help with that. It would be a centralized position, and it would do more than just help with accessibility issues. It would also have a part in accessibility with regard to facilities and technological help. Another thing Geyer Dietrich mentions is the need for accessibility to be present in evaluations. So her recommendation is that accessibility has a place in faculty evaluations. Another thing that was mentioned is to sort of promote and generate awareness of the issues that are present within hardware, software, and vendor content. Now, some of the software and hardware that we use on campus as part of our jobs, right, is not accessible innately. You actually have to work with it in order to make it accessible. And some of the outside third-party type of tools that we use are not accessible at all. And sometimes this includes vendor content. So we need to make sure that we're weaving through and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and for those things that we can make work, how to make them work, which is where some training comes into play. Additionally, her findings indicate that we need to get curriculum assessment and program review committees involved. Geyer Dietrich states, "Course reviews, curriculum reviews, and program reviews all need to include accessibility of review criteria." So that's something that we need to work on with those appropriate parties. And additionally, communication needs to be present at all levels. That is from the district office, that is within the college campuses, that is from college campus to college campus. Geyer Dietrich states, "Communication has to change and education must be embedded in communication technology." If we're going to make this work, communication has to be key.
Now that we know some of the things that we've done really well regarding accessibility, and we know the things that we haven't been doing so well, what are we going to do about it? Well, Matt and I want to talk to you about some training opportunities that are coming up, hopefully coming out to you in March. These training opportunities are going to be geared towards the 3 different areas on our campus that need training: our faculty, our classified, and our managers. Each of these areas need training, and each of them have different needs. So we're going to be really thoughtful about the courses that we select and the certificates that each area is able to achieve. The goal is, in the end, to have training that helps make all information at Bakersfield College accessible to all Bakersfield College students.
And something else that I'd like to add is accessibility is a thread that is woven through all the workshops your academic technology department offers. So if you're ever curious, check out those workshops and you will undoubtedly encounter some level of accessibility training. So thank you for joining us today. And we'd like to leave you with a quote.
The one argument for accessibility that doesn't get made nearly often enough is how extraordinarily better it makes some people's lives. How many opportunities do we have to dramatically improve people's lives just by doing our job a little bit better? Thank you.
Thank you.